Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was the bodyguard of Azula. Naruto is banished from Konoha, but gives them the slip and boards a ship. Soon after, he is shipwrecked on Ember Island and is saved by Azula. 3 years later, Naruto is Azula's bodyguard while she hunts for the Avatar, but did he see the last of Konoha? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 22, Purge and Save. Location, Fire Nation. Appa swam down the course of a river that was infested with brown sludge. While Sokka, Katara, Toph, and Akela were on Appa, Aang and Momo were playing in the water. Momo. The airbender called out, popping out of the water. As the lemur flew towards him, he went under the water again. Oh Momo. He called out again from a different spot. He went under and popped out of the water a third time, but this time Momo landed on his head. You found me, buddy, he said, laughing. He leapt out of the water and back into the saddle. Hey guys, I think this river's polluted. What tipped you off? Sokka asked, looking at the sludge-covered avatar. Aang was about to airbend the sludge off when he said, hey. Turn around and do that. Aang faced the river and bent the air, sending the sludge back, making it land with a sound that almost sounded sickening. It looks we'll need to go somewhere else to get food, Katara noted as she looked at the river. She doubted that they would be able to find any food here, not unless they wanted to be very sick afterwards. That's fine, so long as we don't take too long doing it, her brother noted as he looked at a local map and his journal, which held the number of days left until the invasion. With each day done and gone, he would scratch it off. Hey, maybe we can get food there, Aang said, pointing forward. Up ahead was a village, sitting in the river. Is there anything that must be done today? Azula asked as she readied herself for the day. Nope, you're free to go see them, Naruto told her from the doorway, watching her finish up. Truth be told, I feel bad for not going to see them earlier. She had been so busy being a dutiful princess of the Fire Nation, and making sure her bastard sister wasn't doing anything that could possibly hurt her or Zuko. But now you are going to see them. They'll be happy to see their big sister, of that I'm sure. Once she was done, the two of them walked out of the room and into the hallways of the royal palace. Azula, called out Ty Lee when the two of them passed her, as well as Mai, Cory, and Zuko. Where are you going? She asked as she and the others caught up with them. I'm going down to see a few people, Azula told the acrobat. When do you go to see people? Mai asked, completely deadpan. The last time she checked, her friend was not the kind of person who visited people. She defended what she was doing. It happens. She's going to the orphanage, Naruto explained. He figured that if they knew, they would stop asking delaying questions. You mean the one that has the kid who tried to steal from you? Ty Lee asked her friend. You mean Spunk? Yeah, I am. Why is he named Spunk? Cory asked. That sounded like a weird name for a person. The boy has lots of it, Naruto answered. You guys gonna come? Mai shrugged. I'm bored. You're always bored, doom and gloom, he replied with a straight face. Don't make me eviscerate you, she threatened, fingering a knife. We've had that talk already. You've tried and failed. She scowled, but the knife was put away. What about Gaara and the others? Cory asked. She hadn't seen the redhead or his siblings ever since yesterday. Usually, they were right beside her big brother. But today, they weren't. They're sleeping off last night. They decided to gamble a bit and drink as well. Wait, weren't you there last night as well? Zuko asked him, having remembered seeing the blonde in the room the Sand siblings were given. Yeah, I was. I just didn't have as much as they did. Come on, let's go already, Ty Lee said with impatience. They all walked out of the royal palace and down to the city. As they walked through the streets, people bowed their heads and stayed out of their way. They paid no attention to it, they were used to it, although Zuko felt a little uncomfortable about it all. But when they walked onto the street where the orphanage was, they saw something that they weren't expecting. "What in the name of Agni is going on?" Azula demanded aloud as they looked on at the building. They had gotten Appa out of the river and onto solid ground. Having decided that it would be better if they went in by themselves, Appa had to be hidden. "Now you look like a little hill with horns," Aang said after he covered the sky bison with moss. "Bye, buddy." The air nomad quickly ran off. "Akela, you're staying too," Sokka told the wolf. "We're not risking it." Akela just nodded in agreement, patted underneath the ledge and sat down. Aang, Katara, Sokka and Toph left the animals, 2 covered and 1 keeping watch, and walked away. "I don't feel anything," Toph said as they stood on a ledge overlooking the river. "Where is the village?" "It's in the middle of the river," Sokka told her, looking at the village. It didn't look like much, but maybe that had to do with the river. "Sure is," a voice below them announced. They looked down and saw an old man standing on a ferry. "My name's Doc. Mind if I ask who you are?" "We're from the Earth Kingdom colonies," Katara answered after she shared a look with the others. They were going to have to stick to that lie if they were going to be questioned about who they were and where they were supposed to be from. "Wow, colonials. Hop on. I'll give a ride you into town." They came down and boarded the ferry. Once they were all on, Doc used his pole to push the ferry across the water. "Why do you guys live on the river?" Katara asked, looking at the river itself. "Because we're a fishing town," Doc answered. He gestured over to the factory, which was belching out black smoke and dispersing the sludge into the water. "At least that's how it was before the factory moved in. Army makes their metal there. Moved in a few years ago and started gunking up our river. And now our little village is struggling to survive." Aang and Katara shared a look of worry as the ferry came into the village. "Thanks for the ride," Aang told Doc as they walked off into the town. "Look at this place. It's so sad," Katara stated as she looked at the village and its inhabitants. They all looked poor, hungry, and barely had the will to keep going on. "We have to do something to help." "There you go again," Sokka muttered to himself. Unfortunately for him, Katara heard him. "What was that?" she asked, rounding on him. "We have a bigger mission we need to stay focused on," he told his sister. "These people are on their own." He walked past her. She grabbed him by the shoulder, making him stop. "These people are starving. But you turn your back on them? How can you be so cold and heartless?" she demanded. "I'm being realistic," he replied. "We can't go around helping every Rinky-Dink town we wander into. We'll be helping them all by taking out the Fire Lord." "Hey, loud mouths!" shouted Toph, covering Sokka's mouth with her hand. "Maybe we should be a little quieter when we're talking about taking out the Fire Lord. She took her hand off his mouth. They were in the Fire Nation, for the love of the spirits. If they said stuff like that out loud, they would be found out. "Come on, Katara, be reasonable about this," Sokka told his sister. "You know our mission has to come first." "I guess so," she finally admitted. She didn't like it, but she knew that it was true. "Let's just get what we need and go," Aang said. They all agreed and kept walking through the village, past its residents while avoiding eye contact. Eventually, they came across a market vendor. "Hey, Doc. You work here too?" Sokka asked after ringing the bell and seeing who the vendor was. "I'm not Doc. I'm Sue." The Doc look-alike introduced himself, a different hat on his head. "Doc's my brother. But we just saw you. You're even wearing the same clothes." "The only difference is your hat," Aang pointed out. "Doc works on the docks," he explained. That's why we call him Doc, and I work in the shop, that's why they call me Sue. I don't get it. Me neither. He dropped beneath the counter and brought up a box. What can I getcha? He asked. The box was full of fish and clams. But they were gray and looked like they would kill you as soon as you took a bite. Hey, I'll give you a special deal. If you pay 3 fish, I'll throw in a clam for free. Sokka touched one of the clams and drew his hand back after seeing brown sludge come out. We'll just take the fish, he said, grabbing 3 fishes. Mind telling your brother we need a ride back to shore? Sue took the fish, wrapped them in packaging, and gave them to Katara. He then dropped below the counter and popped back up wearing Doc's hat. Hey colonials, my brother says you need a lift. He jumped over the counter and began to walk off. They followed him when a child ran up to Katara and grabbed her arm. Can you spare some food? He asked her. She looked at him with sadness in her eyes. Taking a fish out of the package, she gave it to the child. I wish I could help more, she told him. He gave a quick bow and ran off with the fish. She watched him go back to his mother, who was lying on a mat and obviously sick, before walking away. What Azula and the others saw was the orphanage was in the midst of being torn down. What is this? Naruto demanded in a quiet, dangerous voice. He had not expected this. He wanted his answers and he wanted them now. Thankfully, he wasn't the only who felt like that. Hey! You kids can't be here, one of the construction workers said when he saw them. You need to leave. He walked up to them and gestured for them to go away. I want to speak to the foreman. Bring him here now, Azula ordered him, not budging from where she stood. Look, lady. The worker started to say, only to stop when he saw Naruto slowly pulling his Jian out. All right, I'll go get him. He quickly walked off. I'm guessing that this isn't what it was last time. Ty Lee asked. What tipped you off? The princess of the Fire Nation all but snarled. The foreman quickly came up to them, having heard from the worker and connected the dots. Prince Zuko, Princess Azula, may I ask why you're here? He asked them, bowing before them. What is going on here? Azula demanded. What do you mean, princess? She pointed at the building he was in charge of destroying. Why is that orphanage being torn down? It's being torn down so that a spa may be built. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Who ordered that? Naruto demanded. The orphanage was funded by the royal family. Lady Yao Jing, he answered. Of course, Azula, Zuko, and Naruto thought. Where are the orphans who were living here? The blonde asked the foreman. I'm not sure, truth be told. Well then go find them. Azula yelled at him. Her voice filled the air and made him flinch away. There's no need for that, sis. We're right here, a boy's voice said behind them. That you, Spunk? Asked Naruto as they turned around to see the orphans. No, it's the Avatar, Spunk replied with obvious sarcasm. He stood in the front of the small group of orphans, the total number adding up to 4. He smiled when he heard those words, instantly relieved. As usual, you live up to your name. Why have you guys been living? Azula asked, walking over to them. The anger and fury disappeared from her voice, replaced with worry. Where do you think? The lead orphan replied. Watch it, Spunk, she warned him. You took them onto the street? She gestured to the other 3. I had to. That foreman kicked us out before they started construction. The foreman in question had already disappeared back to his work when he saw that the orphans were there. What happened to the new owner? Naruto demanded. There should have been a new owner of the orphanage to take care of them and everyone else. He never came, one of the orphans, a girl with a rag tied around her eyes, said as she clung to Spunk's side. We kept getting messages saying that something had come up and that the owner will be there soon. What happened to the other orphans, doll? He asked her. The other two twins, a boy and a girl, snorted in unison. Some got lucky and got adopted, the boy said. The others ran off into the streets and joined up with any gang that would take them, the girl said with disgust. Those cowards left us. Skid, enough, Spunk told her, trying to be authoritative. You and Slide need to stop being angry at them. They made their choice. Well, what are we going to do now, Spunk? Our home's already half destroyed. Slide pointed at the building to emphasize her point. Please stop fighting, Doll pleaded. She hated it when everyone started fighting with each other. They all stopped and looked at the blind girl. Sorry, Doll, Skid apologized, realizing that their fighting was pointless. Azula ordered the foreman to come back and stand in front of her again, which he did as quickly as possible. You will stop your work and tell me, my brother, or the Fire Lord says otherwise. Is that understood? She told him. The look on her face told the foreman to agree, unless he wanted a lightning bolt where the sun doesn't shine. Perfectly clear, Princess, he replied with a slight fear. He turned around, walked back to the construction crew, and began barking orders. As for you four, she said, turning back to face the orphans. You're coming with us. What? Spunk said, surprised. He had not been expecting to hear that response. You will be staying with us until we can sort this all out, Naruto told him. Both he and Azula silently agreed that the four would not spend another day on the streets. They had set up camp for the night. Aang and Toph stood over a barrel of sludge water. Aang bent the water out of the jar and Toph bent out the sludge. He then bent the water over to Katara, who bent it into a cauldron that had a fire going underneath it. Okay, we've lost a day in the village, Sokka said as he dipped a bowl into the cauldron and filled it with water. But thankfully, we're still on schedule. Oh goody, Toph said, dry sarcasm in her voice. Katara took a bowl of water for herself and sat down. Hey, Sokka. She began to say. No, he cut her off. But. No. You're not. No. You don't even know what I'm going to say. She shouted at him. He looked at her. You want us to stay an extra couple of days so we can help out the town, right? She didn't say a word. Katara, we're on a schedule. Granted, I may not have written it out to exact detail, but it's still a schedule. We're leaving first thing tomorrow morning, no complaints. Katara's face turned downcast when she heard those words. The next day, Aang woke up to see Appa on his side, groaning. What's the matter, Katara? He asked the waterbender as he jumped down from where he had been sleeping. I think Appa's sick, she replied, standing in front of the sky bison. You've got to be kidding, Sokka announced as he got out of the saddle. How can he possibly get sick? Probably from the polluted water, Toph suggested. It seemed to be the most obvious answer. The sky bison had been swimming in it. He doesn't look sick, Aang noted. You okay, buddy? Appa just groaned in response. His tongue is purple, that can't be good, he announced after pulling out said tongue. Katara, can you heal him? She looked at the tongue. It looks like he needs some medicine. Maybe we can find the right herbs in town. As they walked through the town, they could see something was going on. Is it just me, or does this place seem different? Toph asked. Yeah, are the people happier? Aang asked. The villagers did seem to be more joyful. Kids were running around, playing games. While that was interesting, they were more focused on getting medicine for Appa. Knowing only one place to go, they walked up to Sue's stall. Hey, Sue, what's going on with everyone today? Sokka asked him. Something amazing happened last night, Sue replied. Food was delivered to our village by a mysterious and wonderful person, the Painted Lady. The Painted who now? asked Katara, obviously confused. The painted lady, he repeated, showing them a statue of the person. She's a part of our town's lore. They say she's a river spirit who watches over our town in times of need. I always thought she was just a legend until now. See, we don't need to help these people, Sokka told his sister as they watched the villagers. They already have someone to help them. He turned to look at Sue. All we need is medicine for our sick friend. Medicine? Repeated Sue. Sorry, all the medicine we have goes to the factory. Factory. That's why there are so many sick people in our village. Looks like we need to stay another night so Appa can rest, Katara said. I guess you're right, Sokka said, sighing in small defeat. You got any more food to sell? He asked Sue. Would you like the one-headed fish or the two-headed fish? He held up the two fish for them to see. One-headed, less gross that way, the tribesman answered, taking the fish. Everyone else with him nodded in agreement. Fire Lord Ozai was surprised at who entered the throne room, mainly because his children don't normally visit him, unless it was related to the war effort. Yet, he maintained his posture as Azula entered the room, with Naruto following her. Father, I must talk to you, she announced. Their pace was agitated and angry. What is it, Azula? Ozai asked from where he sat. Why did you allow Yao Jing to order the orphanage that I had back demolished? She demanded, wanting an answer. Your sister pointed out the fact that the land the orphanage sat on could be used for something better. A spa is something better. He frowned as the room was silent for a moment before speaking again. She failed to mention that part. But that was done now. The orphanage will be destroyed, and unless either of you can give a better idea, Yao Jing will have her spa. You have until the end of the week. That is all. Azula bowed and left the throne room with Naruto on her tail. They walked out into the corridor and saw Yao Jing standing against the wall. When she saw her, Azula all but snarled at her. Temper, temper, little Azula, she mocked. What's wrong? You didn't get what you wanted. You knew that orphanage had my backing, the princess growled. You knew, and you still went and had it destroyed. Do you not realize how many kids you put out on the streets? She laughed harshly at those words. It doesn't matter. Who cares about them? They're nothing but little street rats. I'd be careful about your words, Yao Jing, Naruto told her. If the Fire Lord hadn't taken you in, you would have been a street rat. She snarled at him and drew back her hand to punch him. Temper, temper, Yao Jing, he said in the exact same mocking tone. If you try to attack me, I'll kill you and say it was self-defense. No one would ever believe you. Are you sure? I think people would be more inclined to believe Princess Azula's bodyguard, who has also distinguished himself in battle, and is also the Fire Nation paragon, rather than the illegitimate daughter of the Fire Lord, especially when his legitimate daughter will back me up. In truth, he was hoping she would do it. That way, he could get rid of her with ease. Now get lost, he ordered her. She walked away with angry steps echoing along the hallways. Both Naruto and Azula walked away as well, just in the opposite direction. Quickly making their way through the hallways, they soon came back to the room where the Sand siblings were living in. The orphans were also in the room, having been put there before the two of them went to see the Fire Lord. Well? Spunk asked them from where he sat at the table with the rest of his group close by. I'm sorry. The orphanage is going to be destroyed, Azula told them. The only thing we can do is make sure that it doesn't become a spa. It's better than nothing, I guess, he remarked. In his humble opinion, a spa was completely useless. What's going to happen to us now, big sister? Doll asked Azula, worried. Right now, you're staying as my guests, Azula told the little girl and the other 3 orphans. Yeah, that's going to work, Skid retorted. It might, Slide argued. Come on, for orphans living as the princess's guests? She asked her brother. We'll be kicked out in 2 weeks if we're lucky. That's provided you don't steal anything, of course. I'm sorry. I wasn't the one who tried to steal from that baker 2 days ago. No, you were the one who tried to steal money off that one noble, and had the guards come after us. We lost almost all the money we made because of that. Enough. Spunk and Naruto thundered. The twins fell silent as they looked at the two of them with slight fear. They shared a look and Naruto gestured for him to speak. Look, it doesn't matter what's going to happen to us. Let's just be thankful we've got a roof over our heads. But Spunk, you know what we were going to use that money for? Slide protested. I said enough, Slide, he repeated himself. We lost the money. That just means we'll have to start over. What was the money for? Gaara asked, bringing everyone's attention to him. That's none of your business, Skid told him. Skid, please, Doll said, reaching out for the older girl's hand. She looked at the blind girl. Doll, that money was for you. He just wants to know what we were going to do, that's all. Skid has a point, Naruto said as he looked at the orphans. It's their money. We have no business asking what it's for. For now, let's make sure they get some food in their bellies. All four of them brightened up at the prospect of food. It had been a long time since they had a good meal. A mist floated over the water towards the village. Riding on top of the mist was a woman dressed in robes and a veil-covered hat. She reached the edge of the town and stepped onto the wooden platform. She entered the house and saw the sick people sleeping there. She began to heal them, one by one. The last one she healed was a woman. Her son slept next to her. He awoke to see the woman heal his mother and walk away. He got out of the bed and went after her. Thank you, Painted Lady, he told her as she walked to the edge of the bridge. She gave a brief nod and then leapt onto the water. The boy tried to look for her, but she had disappeared into the mist. The next day, Aang, Sokka, Katara, and Toph walked back into the village and towards Su's stand. Hi, Doc, Sokka greeted him. Is Su around? Let me check. He walked around the back of the stand, whistling merrily. When he ducked down, Su came up. Hey there. Back again, are ya? He asked, coming back into the stand. We need more food, Toph told him, pushing Sokka out of the way. Our friend is still sick and we can't leave without him. She slapped down some money on the counter. Oh well, that's too bad. He took the money and handed them a bowl of clams. Maybe if you guys are lucky, the Painted Lady will visit you in the night and heal your friend. And maybe she'll cook us a midnight snack and we'll all have a sing-along, Sokka said sarcastically, bowl in hand. Yeah, maybe, he replied, completely missing the sarcasm. You know, last night she visited us again. Healed most of our sick folks. Is that why this place seems so festive? Aang asked, looking out at the town. Kids were running around, having a good time, while some of the other villagers were putting up a statue of the Painted Lady. Yep, it's all because of the Painted Lady. Can you believe how much an entire village can be affected by one lady? Katara asked the others. I mean, spirit? Well, I hope she returns every night, Sokka said. Otherwise, this place would go right back to the way it was. Why would you say that? Look how much better off these people are. They were happy and joyful. Yeah, now, but without her they wouldn't be able to fend for themselves, he answered. If she really wanted to help, she would use her spirit magic to blow up that factory. That would help them all quite a lot. Yeah, she could do that. Aang chimed in before making silly noises and imitating the factory blowing up. Katara just huffed and stomped away. She walked towards the edge of the pier and looked out at the factory. That night, when everyone was asleep, Katara rose from her sleeping bag. She stuffed grass into it to make it look like there was someone still in there. She then grabbed a nearby cloak and put it on. After that, she knelt in front of a small pool of water. Bending it up against a nearby rock and freezing it, she used it as a mirror and began to apply the paint. She placed the hat on her head and began to move towards the village. However, her walking managed to wake Momo, who woke up Aang in the process of jumping off Appa. "What's the matter, buddy?" Aang asked as Momo watched the figure disappear. "It's her." He leapt off Appa's leg and went after her. "Hello, painted lady spirit," he called out after tying on his headband. Katara stopped, took a quick look back and started to run. But Aang decided to go after her, using his air bending to help him. "Excuse me. I don't mean to bother you, but my friend's sick and we're on a schedule." She paid him no mind as she made her way across the river. "Wait. But I'm the great bridge between your world and mine." He went after her, bending ice to form stepping stones to get across the water. "I know, hey bye. We're close, personal friends." They ran through the village, Katara on the ground and Aang over the rooftops. "Hey!" he called out. But he didn't look where he was going and ran into a pole. Katara took one quick look back, but kept running. She made through the village and onto the other side of the river. She hid behind a cluster of rocks and took one last look at the village. Thinking she was safe, she took a sigh of relief. That's when Aang showed up again, hanging upside down from the rock. "My name's Aang, I'm the Avatar," he introduced himself, raising his headband and showing her his headband. She made sure to keep her face obscured. "Well, hello Avatar," she greeted him in a fake voice as he landed on the ground. "I wish I could talk, but I am very busy." "Yeah, me too," he muttered. "I hate that." He looked closer at her. "You know, you're really pretty for a spirit. I don't get to meet too many spirits, but the ones I do meet, not very attractive." She gave a nervous laugh. "Thank you, but you seem familiar too," he noted, trying to look under the hat. "A lot of people say that," she tried to assure him. "No, you really seem familiar. Look, I really should get going." She pulled down the hat and started to walk away. Annoyed that he was just being waved off, Aang flicked a blast of air at her. It blew off her hat, revealing who she was. She quickly grabbed the hat and put it back on. "But it was too late, Katara?" he asked, surprised to see that it was her. "Hi, Aang," she said, turning to face him. "You're the painted lady?" he asked, pointing at her. "But how?" "I wasn't her at first, I was just trying to help the village. But since everyone thought that's who I was anyway, I guess I just kinda became her," she explained, taking off the hat and letting it fall to the ground. "So you've been sneaking out at night? Wait, is Appa even sick?" "He might be sick of the purple berries I've been feeding him, but other than that he's fine," she told the air nomad, feeling a little sheepish at her actions. "I can't believe you lied to everyone, so you could help these people." "I'm sorry," she apologized to him. "I know I shouldn't have." No, I think it's great," he quickly assured her. "You're like a secret hero." She was comforted by that little piece of praise. "Well, if you want to help, there's one more thing I have to do." He became confused, so she took him to the bottom of the factory, where the pipes were spewing out the sludge. "You want to destroy this factory?" he asked, just to be sure. "Yes." Sokka was just kidding, but he was right. Getting rid of this factory is the only way to help these people permanently. They ran into the factory and then split up. Katara bent her water to cut off the chains that held the barrels of molten iron, dropping them to the ground and spilling the contents. Aang poured another barrel empty, using gloves to protect his hands. He then leapt into the middle of a pipe system and used earth bending to break the pipes. Katara stood over a balcony. She bent the water out of a glass tank and flooded the place. All of these actions caused the factory to start exploding, destroying it. As the two of them ran away, the black smoke died away, and the sludge stopped coming out of the pipes. Zuko couldn't sleep. Despite being back home again for some time now, he still wasn't used to how soft the bed was. He had grown used to the stiff beds on his ship and the ones in Ba Sing Se, not to mention sleeping on the ground itself. He got out of the bed, left his room, and started to wander the palace. When he walked through the royal gallery, idly looking at his predecessors, he heard a noise behind him. "Who's there?" he called out, turning around and unconsciously moving into a fire-bending stance. "It's just me," Doll squeaked out, scared by how he moved so suddenly. "I got lost." She wasn't used to big places like the palace. "Doll, what were you doing outside the room?" he asked her, walking up to her. "And why are you alone?" "I thought you were blind." I am. But She trailed off, suddenly very nervous. Can you keep a secret?" she asked him. He nodded. "I'm a firebender." "Why is that a secret?" "Surely the others know of this." "If someone was a firebender, people from the Fire Nation would know." "They do, but they don't know what I can do with my firebending. I don't want them to think I'm weird." "Weird?" he repeated, unsure of what she meant by that. She nodded. "If I show them what I can do, what's stopping them from thinking I'm a freak? I don't want them to hate me." Her bottom lip began to tremble and Zuko could tell she was about to cry. "They care about you, Doll," he quickly assured her, kneeling down so they were speaking on the same level. "Why would they collect money for you if they might possibly hate you?" I guess you're right." She could understand what he was trying to say but was still unsure herself. "What was the money for?" he asked, genuinely curious. The question had been bugging him and the others, but they didn't know when a good time was to ask them it. For a long time, most of the orphans in the orphanage had been taking money, she explained. "I don't know whether it was from jobs, or they stole it. They never told me. They hid it from the owner to make sure he never took it. They told me that I didn't belong in the orphanage or even on the streets if it came to that. They said that I deserved better. They told me that, once they were done collecting the money needed, they were going to use it to send me to one of the lower classes in the Royal Fire Academy for girls." He was surprised to hear that. A place in one of the classes in the Royal Fire Academies were quite expensive, both boys and girls. "How long were they doing this?" 3 years. But I had planned on refusing." "Why?" He couldn't really understand why she would refuse such a thing. The Royal Fire Academy for girls was the best place for a girl to receive an education. Even one of the lower classes was better than the typical school. "I'm terrified of what will happen to the others, now even more so," she told him. "If I leave them, what will happen to them? They've been risking their lives so that I can go somewhere better? I don't want that, not if they'll get killed because of me." "They've been risking their lives so you wouldn't have to live on the streets, Doll," he told her. "They don't want to see you sitting on a street, begging for money or food. You're like their little sister, and they're willing to do anything to protect you." She smiled sadly at those words. "And yet, I keep a secret from them. I'm a horrible little sister." "Then tell me your secret." She scurried over to his ear and whispered. His eyes went wide when he heard what she had said. "You mean you can?" She nodded once. "Do you think you could teach this?" "I don't know, maybe." She had always been too embarrassed about to try and teach it to anyone else. "Then come with me." He stood up and took her hand. Together, they walked to a quiet spot where no one would see or hear them. Aang and Katara walked back to the camp as the morning came. Aang laughed and imitated the factory blowing up. "Shhh." Katara shushed him. "We don't want to wake Sokka." Unfortunately for them, Sokka was already up. Akela, Toph, and Momo were up too. "Hi, Sokka, we were just out on a morning walk." The waterbender tried telling her brother. "A morning walk?" he repeated before holding her sleeping bag upside down and dumped out the grass. He dropped the bag and turned around. We're leaving, he announced. Isn't Appa sick? Katara asked, hopeful that Sokka didn't realize that bit. Akela, are you sick? Akela opened his mouth and showed his purple tongue. What about you, Toph? You not feel well? Nope, I'm good. I just had some of these berries, she replied, holding up the bag of berries and showing her purple tongue as well. Momo reached for the berries and started eating them. Katara, what you did put our whole mission in jeopardy. We're leaving right now. Katara walked past him with a downcast expression. And how long did you know about this? Her brother asked Aang, giving him the hairy eyeball. Hey, I just found out this morning, Aang told him before moving quickly away. They all started packing up when they heard a noise coming from the river. Running quickly to the edge, they saw soldiers from the factory riding on jet skis towards the village. What's going on? Toph asked. She couldn't see the river due to her blindness. All she heard was a lot of noise. Fire Nation soldiers are heading to the village, Aang told her. What did you do? Sokka asked Katara, his tone demanding. I kind of destroyed their factory, she told him hesitantly. You what? It was your idea. She protested. I was joking. I also said to use spirit magic. He smacked his forehead at her actions. Did you even think this through? He asked her. The army is going to blame the villagers. They're headed there right now to get revenge. Well, what was I supposed to do? She asked back. Leave. Do nothing. But that was something she would never do. No. I will never, ever turn my back on people who need me, she declared. I'm going down to the village, and I'm gonna do whatever I can. She stood up and began to walk away. He sighed and stood up. Wait. I'm coming too, he told his sister, stopping her with a hand on her shoulder. I thought you didn't want to help. You need me, and I will never turn my back on you. Besides, I'm the one who usually cleans up the mess you make. She winced at those words. You didn't have to put it like that. It's true and we both know it. He went past her and began walking down to help the village. Come on, I've got an idea, he told the rest of them. Meanwhile the soldiers had reached the village. I thought we could live as neighbors in peace, the leader said to the villagers. But I guess I was wrong. You steal our food, our medicine, and then you destroy our factory. Doc popped out of the crowd. We didn't do any of that, he said. He dropped back into the crowd and Sue popped out in a different spot. Yeah, the painted lady brought us food. She's the one who healed our sick, not your medicine. Oh right, the mysterious painted lady did it. He held up a statuette of her. And I suppose she drew the army emblem on your containers too. He smashed the statuette. This is a town of thieves and liars. He set a house ablaze. Where's your painted lady now? He asked the villagers. They said nothing. They only looked at the fire in shock. We're going to cure the world of this wretched village. 2 soldiers got back on a jet ski and started to circle the village. The soldier on the back threw a chain at one of the beams supporting a house. They drove past, causing the beam to snap and the house to fall into the river. Meanwhile, 2 soldiers set a flammable case tied to a buoy on fire. But before they could do anything else, a gust of wind came out of nowhere and put the fire out. Somewhat perplexed, they lit it again, but another gust of wind came and put out the fire. Light it again. The leader ordered. They did so, but this time the wind put out the fire before it could take hold. Look at that, where's it coming from? The female soldier asked. I don't know, the male soldier replied. Something strange is going on. A fog began to roll in towards the village. They could also hear flute music that sounded almost eerie and a deep growling sound. It's the painted lady, one boy in the crowd said. She's coming. There is no painted lady, the leader snapped at the boy. They began to hear a thumping noise, almost like footsteps, that went off in rhythm. If one was to go past the fog, they would have seen Toph bending a boulder up and down, making the thumping noise. Appa stood next to her, making the growling noise. Sokka sat on a ledge, playing the flute, and Akela sat on his haunches, waiting. What is that sound? The female soldier asked as the fog encircled the village. It was a sound that was making her bones go cold. Maybe it is her, the male soldier said. As the fog cleared from the other bank, the flute, the growl and the noise all died away. Instead, they heard the howl of a wolf as they saw the painted lady, aka Katara, standing on the other bank. When the howling died away, she surged forward on the water and leapt onto the dock. Despite being surprised by seeing her, the leader of the soldiers got his wits back together. Do something, he ordered, pushing the other soldiers forward. They approached her cautiously with swords drawn. All she did was look at them, and a gust of wind blew off their headbands. Freaked out, they ran away. If someone wanted to know how she did that, all they had to do was look down at the dock. Aang was hiding underneath and used a crack in the dock to use his air bending. Stand your ground, the leader ordered. The painted lady walked forward a few steps and stopped. She looked over at the two jet skis sitting idly in the water nearby. She bent the river to send them up high, and then into the side of the cliff, destroying them. Then all she had to do was raise a hand against the soldiers and most of them ran to the jet skis, leaving the leader alone. I'll take care of you myself, he declared, taking a fire-bending stance. The two of them had a stare down. He acted first by bending an arc of fire at her. Aang saw this coming and took a deep breath. As the fire was about to hit Katara, he bent a large dome of air beneath her, sending up into the air. He then destroyed the dock with air bending, sending the soldier flying into the river. As he broke the surface and gasped for breath, the painted lady appeared in front of him, standing over the water. Leave this place and never come back, she ordered him. He started to swim away until a soldier driving a jet ski pulled alongside and let him get on. She watched with a somewhat amused expression as they drove away. As Sokka rowed the boat that he and Toph were into the village, the villagers were cheering for the painted lady as she landed back on the dock. I knew you come, the boy from earlier said to the painted lady. Thank you, Doc told her as someone from the crowd shouted that she was the best. Me and my brothers really owe you a lot. He looked closer at her. Hey, wait a minute. I know you. You're not the painted lady. You're that colonial girl. Stunned, Katara touched her face and then looked at her hand. The paint was smudged and had easily come off. Oh, she thought. Yeah, you're the lady that gave me a fish, the same boy said. While he might have been happy that she helped, he was mad at the fact that she lied to them all. You've been tricking us, Doc accused her. You're a waterbender. The crowd got angry when they heard that little piece of information. They began to get closer to her when Sokka stood in front of her. Maybe she is a waterbender, but she was just trying to help you, he said, making them stop. Because of her, that factory won't be polluting your river and the army is gone. You should be down on your knees and thanking her. Sokka, it's okay, Katara told him. She walked forward and took off the hat. I shouldn't have acted like someone I wasn't, and I shouldn't have tricked you. She addressed the crowd. But I felt like I had to do something. It doesn't matter if the painted lady is real or not. Because your problems are real, and this river is real. You can't wait around for someone to help you. You have to help yourself. She's right, Doc agreed, seeing the logic in her words. But what should we do? Maybe we can clean the river, Toph said from the crowd, using a lower voice. Yeah, we can clean the river. The crowd loudly agreed with the statement. Thank you. You know, you're not so bad for a waterbender, he told Katara as the crowd behind him dispersed and began to prepare to clean the river. You wouldn't mind keeping that a secret, would you? Sokka asked. No problem, keeping my mouth shut is a personal specialty. My brother Su on the other hand, he's a blabbermouth. The tribesman just groaned and smacked his head when he heard those words. So, Doc, are you gonna help us clean? Katara asked him. If they were going to clean the river, they would need all the help they could get. No, ma'am, he answered. I'm going to get my other brother, Bushy. He loves cleaning rivers. Then, in front of them with no thought about it, he just switched hats. All right, I'm Bushy. Let's get some river cleaning done. Aha, I knew it, declared Aang with a triumphant voice. I knew you were the same guy, the shop owner and the boat guy. Oh, you must be talking about my brothers, Doc and Su, he said. No, I just saw you. You switched hats and called yourself a different name. Oh, you know who does that? My brother, Doc. He leaned closer, like what he was about to say was a big secret. He's crazy, he told them before chuckling and walking away. Aang had a look of extreme annoyance when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Just go with it, Aang, Sokka told him. Everyone got aboard boats and went to work cleaning up the river. Katara, Toph, and Aang helped by using their bending. Katara pulled out the water and placed it in a tank while Toph and Aang put the sludge onto a boat. They spent the day like this, and as the day went on, the river was getting cleaner and cleaner. Father, Azula greeted Ozai as she, Naruto, Zuko, and the orphans came into the throne room. I believe I have found something more useful for the land where the orphanage is. Have you now? He asked, curious to see what she would say for an answer. Yes. Instead of a spa, have them build a school for firebending. She had thought long and hard about what to have built there instead of a spa that would tweak Yao Jing's nose. And she believed that this was the perfect way. Oh? How is that any better than a spa? Her father asked, wanting to hear her reasons for wanting to build a school. If we build the school, we can train new firebenders to harness their bending, she explained. We would also teach them how to help the Fire Nation with their bending. And they would have more soldiers for the war. The room fell silent as he considered what she said. The idea has merit, he agreed. Very well, the building will become a dojo. Thank you, father, she bowed before him and took a step back. She was going to enjoy the look of outrage on her bastard sister's face when she found out about this. Father, I have something to ask of you, Zuko said, stepping forward and bowing to the Fire Lord. And what would that be, Prince Zuko? Ozai asked, slightly, ever so slightly, curious to see what his son would want. I would ask that you would do something for each one of these orphans. He gestured to Spunk, Skid, Slide, and Doll. The four of them were dressed in good clothes and stood at his side with their backs straight. Why would I do that? He gestured for Doll to come forward. She took a few steps forward and bowed to the man sitting above her. Greetings, Fire Lord Ozai, she said to him. My name is Doll, and I am a firebender. You are blind, he declared, looking at her. It was easy to tell that. All he had to do was look at the strip of cloth covering her eyes. Yes, my lord. However, I have managed to create a way to see, using my fire bending, my lord. The other orphans were stunned at what she had said. They knew that she was a firebender, but they didn't know that she could do that. He was now interested in what she had to say. Continue. I could only learn the basics of firebending, my lord, she explained. So, I tried to use them to overcome my blindness. I eventually managed to redirect my inner energy into my eyes. As a result, I could see the world through the heat of others. Then you will not mind if I put what you say to the test. The flames around him grew bigger, almost like they are enveloping him. Can you see me now? He asked her. Both Azula and Zuko shared a nervous look. They hadn't expected this. But Doll wasn't nervous about it. She stayed calm. Yes, my lord. I can also see the servants standing in the corners, waiting for your orders, and the guards standing in the shadows. She pointed at where the people she had spoken about were. And how would this benefit the Fire Nation? Ozai asked them. He wanted to know what the benefits before deciding anything. My lord, there are several practical advantages to this kind of ability, both in battle and outside the battlefield, Naruto told the Fire Lord. If she can teach this ability to other firebenders, the military wouldn't be so handicapped at night. We'd be able to see what was coming and be ready for it. Our defenses would be better prepared if an attack at night occurred. It might also help the firebenders who have been blinded permanently to help regain a semblance of their eyesight, even if the eye in question is either damaged or was taken out. He thought what he had just been shown over. What would you have me do for them, my son? He finally asked Zuko. I humbly request to have doll placed in the Royal Fire Academy for girls, the Scarred Dragon promptly answered. As for the others, have them placed in the care of the 41st Division. That way, they'll be taken care of. Very well, I will do these things, he announced, making the orphans excited to hear those words. But on 2 conditions. First, before she can enter the academy, this child must teach her ability to the teachers there. Second, once the others are of age, they are to join the 41st, unless any colonial governor makes any request regarding these orphans otherwise. My lord, we'll become officers if you want us to, Spunk spoke up. We just want Doll to have a better life than the streets. That's all they ever wanted. Then consider these favors given. You may go. They all bowed and left the throne room. So, how long have you been able to do that? Skid asked Doll once they were back in the hallway. For about a year now, she answered, nervous. Do you guys hate me? She hoped that they didn't. The other 3 orphans were surprised by what she asked. Hate you? Why would we hate you, Doll? Her hopes rose at those words. You mean, you don't hate me? I'm pretty sure that's what my moron of a twin sister said, Slide answered. Skid turned to look at her twin brother. I'm a moron? You're the idiot. She told him, raising a fist. Before the argument could even start, Spunk whacked them over the heads. Knock it off, he ordered them. They grumbled but complied. Look, you 4, Azula said to them, getting their attention. Be glad for what just happened. Your futures are now safe. Doll's going to the academy. That's true, but we were also kinda hoping that she would be adopted as well, Slide said. That would have been a much better life for her. Doll put a reassuring hand on him. Don't worry, Slide. Maybe one of the teachers there will adopt me, or another family. And I don't have to worry about the other girls teasing me, because I have big sister Azula to keep me safe. I won't be there all the time, Doll, Azula said to her. You'll have to learn how to stand up for yourself. Come on, Azula, Naruto told the princess of the Fire Nation. Let her enjoy the fact that her big sister will scare away the bad guys. She gave a warm smile, one of the very few times she did that. I never said that I wouldn't do it, she replied, pulling Doll into a hug. It was dark and most of the team was sleeping. Katara walked to the edge of the river and put her hands into it, feeling the water. Fog began to curl around her hands. She looked up and saw the actual painted lady. Thank you, she simply said, before fading away into the mist. Katara was surprised by what she saw but smiled all the same. She then heard a noise behind her. Turning around, she saw her brother walking up to her. Sokka, I thought you were asleep, she said. I was waiting for the others to go to sleep, he told her. We need to talk. What do you mean? Katara, I know you wanted to help the villagers. But what you did was completely and utterly stupid. If we hadn't caught the soldiers off guard, we probably would have gotten captured and possibly killed, he said to his sister, his tone sharp and unforgiving. What do you want to say? That I'm sorry? She knew that she had made a mistake, but they had managed to save the village and the river in the end. Wasn't that a good thing? No, I'm going to give you this one warning. You pull something like this ever again, and I will have Appa fly you back home so you can act like a child there. What? You wouldn't do that. The waterbender immediately protested, even though she recognized that she had used that exact threat to him before. If it ensures the safety of the group, yes I would. Are we clear? He asked her. She was about to voice another argument, it died down when he looked at her. Standing under the light of the moon, she didn't see who her brother was, she saw what he was going to become. She saw a warrior, a leader, a man who would have to make decisions and live with them, whether they were good or bad. Above all else, she saw the paragon of the water tribes. Yeah, we're clear, she said, conceding defeat. Then get some sleep, I'll take watch. She walked back to the camp, leaving him alone by the riverbank. He had to admit that since the river had been cleaned, it looked much better. But he wasn't alone for long, wasn't that a bit harsh? Doc asked the tribesman, walking up to him. It had to be, he answered, looking over at the ferryman. What are you doing out here, Doc? Oh, I'm just out here visiting my aunt. Your aunt? There was no one else out here. It was just the two of them standing by the river. Oh, don't play around, boy, Doc told him with a sharp tone of voice. You saw her, same as me and your sister. The tribesman thought about it, trying to figure out what he was talking about. It didn't take long to figure out. Wait, I thought you said the painted lady was a river spirit, he said in mild protest. Well, that was her cover before she died, Doc replied with ease. I just helped maintain it over the years. Sokka narrowed his eyes at him. You're not as crazy as everyone thinks you are you? The ferryman chuckled at those words. What do you think? He asked back. Those names you use, they're not your real name, not any of them. Oh, I don't know. They suit me when I need them. What was your name? The tribesman asked him. If he kept using different names, it must have meant that he didn't want to use his actual name anymore. Doc stiffened a little at those words. But then he gave a tired sigh and took off his hat, showing that his hair only ringed around the side of his head. My name was Raka from the Northern Water Tribe. And my aunt was your predecessor. Sokka touched the medallion underneath his shirt when he heard that. You mean she was? He asked, leaving it hanging. The Water Tribe paragon before you? Yes, she was, the man standing before him answered. It was funny, but without his different hats and personalities, he seemed to be a lot older. What was she doing in a Fire Nation village? He would have thought that she would have died in one of the poles. She was in hiding. Who was she hiding from? I'm afraid that's not my story to tell. And it's not yours alone to hear. You best be going back to your camp now. Yeah, you're right. He turned around and started walking back to the camp. He stopped and looked back. Hey, Raka, if you ever see her again, tell her I'm sorry, I couldn't learn from her. Don't you worry, I have a feeling she already knows. He pointed out at the river. Once again, the painted lady stood over the water. But this time, she looked different. Her skin was darker and her eyes were blue. But she still wore the dress, the hat and the makeup. Sokka turned to look at her. He then did the only thing he thought appropriate. He bowed to her, like a student bowing to his teacher. My lady, he said in a voice of respect. She simply smiled before disappearing again. When he looked up, Doc had disappeared too. He turned back around and walked back to the camp. Chapter 23, Teach and Learn. Location, Fire Nation. It was night and a meteor show was happening. Wow, this is amazing to watch, Katara said as she watched. Kind of makes you realize how insignificant we are, Sokka mused to himself. Toph couldn't see what they were seeing, so it didn't mean much to her. You see nothing once, you've seen it 1,000 times, she said. There was a brief flash of light, and one of the meteors changed course, hurtling down to the earth. Oh man, you've never not seen anything like this, Sokka told her as he, Aang, and Katara stood up. The meteor flew over their heads and crashed somewhere behind a hill. They quickly saddled up and flew towards the smoke. The fire is gonna destroy that town, Katara announced as they flew down to the fire. The meteor had crashed into a field next to a small town. The crash site had been set ablaze and was rapidly growing. Not if we can stop it, Aang declared. Appa landed next to the fire and Aang, Sokka, Toph, Momo, and Akela got off of his saddle. Katara took Appa's reins as she pointed over at the creek. There's a creek over here. I'll bend the water onto the fire. Appa took off with her on board. Toph, let's make a trench to stop the fire from coming any closer, the air nomad told the blind earthbender. The two of them ran towards the fire. What am I supposed to do? Sokka asked them. He was just left standing there. Keep an eye on Momo and Akela, Aang shouted without looking back. Oh great, I'm an animal sitter, he complained to himself. Toph and Aang ran up to the fire and bent the earth to split apart, forming a trench. They then bent the trench wider, cutting off the room the fire had to grow. The action caused small flames to fly out of the main fire and land near Sokka and the animals, who put them out. Sokka got one while Momo and Akela got the others. Appa flew down over the creek and Katara bent a large amount of water up out of it. She flew it over the fire, letting some drizzle out to minimize the fire. Meanwhile, Toph was using earthbending to flip a piece of the trench's bottom repeatedly, putting out the fire's edges. Sokka, stand clear, Aang shouted out as he took the rest of the water from Katara. Right, stand clear, got it, Sokka muttered as he stood up from where he sat and walked away, carrying Momo. Akela padded behind him. Unfortunately, Aang didn't bother to wait. He used both waterbending and airbending to expand the water. The deluge hit both Sokka and Akela. Momo flew skyward when he saw it coming. The deluge expanded into a dome of water and then exploded, extinguishing the fire and turning the rest of the water into snow. Good work, everybody, Aang congratulated them all. The fire had been stopped and the town had been saved. Yeah, great job, Sokka said after popping his head out of a pile of snow. Akela did the same thing right next to him. You couldn't have waited 5 minutes? Oops, sorry about that, he apologized with a sheepish grin. Just help us out of this. His face had a brief look of both pain and surprise before he glared at the wolf next to him. Hey, watch where you put those paws, Akela. Zuko sat at his desk with a map sprawled across from it. Since his formal reign station into the succession, the Crown Prince had been busy keeping himself updated on the progress made by the military during their current expansionist phase. He was so focused into the map and one of the older reports that he did not hear a knock until a short-statured man approached him. Prince Zuko? Ha said as he walked into the prince's room, carrying what appeared to be numerous scrolls on his arms. I have the latest reports from the front. His arms were shaking from the weight, and he was almost afraid that he would drop them. Thank you, Ha, Zuko replied without even looking up from the map in front of him. Put them right there. He pointed to a spot on the desk. Here you are, my prince. He placed the papers down on the spot. Silence reigned in the room before the servant spoke again. My prince, may I ask a question? Go ahead. Why are you reading the military reports? I thought the war was over. The prince doing all of this was rather pointless now. Just because we took Ba Sing Se doesn't mean the war is won, Zuko told him. If anything, it'll keep the war going. This is my way of catching up. That was why he had spent the past few days looking at maps and reading reports. He held up the report in his hands to emphasize his point. He hadn't it yet, but when he did, something got his attention. He put the report down and picked up another. He grabbed the first report and compared the two before looking the map of the Earth Kingdom on the table. Is everything all right, my prince? Ha asked the prince. Ha, I want you to arrange a meeting with General Shinu, the Scarred Dragon ordered. There is something he should know about. Yes, sir, I'll see to it immediately. He bowed and walked out of the room. The warden opened the door to Iroha's cell. He walked to the cell, dropped the bowl of food in his hands to the ground and kicked it past the bars, spilling its contents. Iroha rushed over and began to eat the food off the ground. Look at you, the warden said. You're just a fat, disgusting old man. You do nothing, you say nothing, you just eat and roll around in your own filth like a pig. You're a disgrace. He spat into the cell and walked away, closing the door. Once the door closed, Iroha gave a small smile and sat back up, eating like a normal person. The act gave him some peace of mind, but it wasn't enough, not with what was coming. He needed to think of a way out. They went into the town the next morning and chose to eat at an open-air restaurant for breakfast. Aang brought a tray of food to the table. These people have no idea how close they were to getting toasted last night, he commented as he sat down. Yeah, the worst thing about being in disguise is we don't get the hero worship anymore, Toph said. I miss the love. Yeah, woe is you, Sokka muttered from the steps, away from them. Akela rested on his paws beside him. What's your problem? Katara asked him. You haven't even touched your smoked sea slug. He looked at the sea slug and noticed Akela was trying to go for a bite. Hey! Keep your paws and your teeth off my slug. He ordered the wolf. He sighed and looked back at the group. Look, all you guys can do amazing things and I can't. There are days where I feel like I can't do anything, he told them. That's not true, his sister tried to reassure him. No one can read a map like you. I can't read at all, Toph chimed in. Yeah, and who keeps us laughing with sarcastic comments all the time? Aang asked him. I mean, look at Katara's hair, right? What's up with that? He held up a bang of her hair. What? What's wrong with my hair? She asked insecurely, taking back the bang. Nothing, I was just trying to. He tried to explain it but couldn't find the right words, one never can in that situation. Great, I'm the team's wisecracking pack mule, Sokka said with bitter sarcasm in his voice. You know, you're just proving my point. Katara walked over and sat down next to him. I'm sorry you're feeling so down, but I hope you know that none of us see you that way. She thought something over. I know something that'll make you feel better. You do? He asked, a little curious. She simply had everyone finish their meal and led them to a weapons store. Sokka looked at her. I love you, he said before heading into the store. Maybe something to reinvigorate my fighting style, he muttered. He grabbed a pair of nunchucks and gave it a couple of practice swings. Shaking his head, he put them back. There were plenty of other weapons to try out. Meanwhile, the others browsed around too. Katara tried on a pair of gloves, thinking that they might help her with her waterbending. What do you think? Aang asked behind her. She turned around and saw him in some of the most overdone armor she had ever seen. Pretty slick, huh? More like ridiculous, she thought. Well, it's something, she said aloud. Thanks. All I need to complete the outfit is a wind sword. What's a wind sword? It's where I get a sword handle, and then I just swing this around and bend air out like a blade. He swung the handle around and made a few whooshing noises. Yeah, nice. It was the only polite thing she could think of saying. The weight of the armor finally got to Aang. He tipped over and crashed into the ground, despite Katara's attempt to catch him. I'll just stick to what I got. Meanwhile, Sokka was trying an assortment of weapons. But whatever he tried, he could never get a feel for it. As he fiddled around with a sai, which included picking his teeth with it, he saw a jian hanging on the wall. He wasn't an expert, but even he could tell this was a beautiful piece of work. That's what Sokka's talking about, he said as he closely examined the jian. You have a good eye, the shopkeeper declared, walking over. That's an original from Piandao, the greatest sword master and sword maker in Fire Nation history. He lives in the big castle up the road from here. The others had gathered to hear what he had to say before he walked away. That's it. Aang suddenly said. That's what you needed all along, Sokka. A sword? Asked Sokka, a little confused. If that was the case, there were plenty of those around. They were cheaper too. But the one before him was a work of art. Not the sword, a master, he clarified as the tribesman took the jian of the rack, and held it in his hands. We all had masters to help us get better. You should see if you can study with Piandao. That's a great idea, Katara chimed in. I could have never gotten to where I am without Master Pakku. Before she learned from him, she had barely gotten anywhere with her waterbending. Now, she was one of the Avatar's bending master. He trained me too, you know, Sokka remarked. He might not have been a waterbending, but he had learned from the man as well. Not the point, and you know it, she told her brother. What I'm trying to say is that everyone needs a teacher. I learned from badger moles, Toph said, feeling a little left out of the conversation. They don't talk, but they're still good teachers. It would be nice to be a master sword fighter, the tribesman mused as he drew the jian and inspected it. All right, I'll talk to him. Zuko heard the door open and turned to face it. General Shinu, he greeted the man who entered the room, saluting. Prince Zuko. The general returned the greeting and the salute. He looked at the table. I see you've been keeping track of the war. Once you've been in it, you can't ignore it, the scarred dragon replied. Have you read the latest reports? Shinu nodded. Yes, the generals and the Fire Lord have agreed that the movements of the Earth Kingdom troops are heading in the direction of Ba Sing Se. We have ordered the nearby troops and ships to be ready for them. There won't be anything waiting for them, the prince told him. They're not heading for Ba Sing Se. In fact, they're going the other way. They plan to hit the colonies, to be specific, Akawan, Kozan, and Udao. And what makes you think that? His voice held a little curiosity. He knew about Zuko's actions during the siege of Akawan. The Fire Lord had called the generals into the throne room and told them what had happened. That was one of the very few times Ozai spoke of his son with a proud smile on his face. While the other generals expressed polite disbelief behind the Fire Lord's back, nobody was stupid enough to express it in his presence. He was willing to see if the prince would live up to the reputation. Look at this map, Zuko told him, gesturing to it. One of the previous reports said that troops still couldn't find Full Moon Bay. In that same report, it said that General Hao had managed to escape imprisonment and flee Ba Sing Se. Being a general on the Council of Five, he would know about Full Moon Bay. What exactly are you trying to get at, Prince Zuko? General Shinu asked him. Full Moon Bay is just outside the Siwang Desert. If someone walks into that desert, they're practically gone until they come out again, and that can be anywhere. Also, General Hao is practical. He knows that retaking Ba Sing Se won't stop the war. It's a symbol, and that won't end the war. So, he'll go after the colonies, the essential ones. How will he do it? He's already begun. He's marching troops in the direction of Ba Sing Se. But instead of going there, he'll have them swing down to where ships or boats will be able to pick them up and sail into Full Moon Bay. From there, he'll march his troops into the Siwang Desert, where we'll lose them. The prince traced what he thought the Earth Kingdom general's path on the map. Coming out of the desert, he continued. I suspect he'll first hit Kozan, then Udao and finally Akawan. Wouldn't he hit Akawan first? Shinu asked him. I had thought that would be the case at first. But then I realized that if he managed to capture it, he would probably use it to mount an attack on the Fire Nation. He will want to take Akawan last so he can make sure that the other two colonies are non-operational. But why would he attack those 3 colonies out of all of them? He knew the answer, and he knew Zuko knew he knew, but he wanted to test him. Like I said before, the general is practical, the scarred dragon explained. Those 3 colonies are essential to supporting our military. Kozan has the raw supplies. Udao is the refinery. And Akawan is the port. Take any one of those, and you will hinder the Fire Nation. Take all 3, and you will cripple it. Something tells me that General Hao will want to cripple it with a passion. What do you think we should do to counter this? He asked, wanting to see what he would do in response. Have every Fire Nation soldier south of the Serpents Pass reinforce those 3 colonies. It might be risky, leaving the other colonies open to attack. But it is a risk we would have to take. If the Fire Nation lost those 3 colonies, they would lose a lot of the land in the Earth Kingdom. Also, Governor Shan will definitely need to be warned of another Earth Kingdom attack on Kozan as well. He has extensive experience in dealing with Earth Kingdom attacks on the colony. The general was silent as he looked at the map and the reports on the desk. I hope you understand that I'll have to check all of this myself, he finally said to Zuko. I talked to Lord Naruto lately, and he has breached an idea that I think has merit. Zuko raised his eyebrow in curiosity. What kind of idea? Well, he has pointed out that the only advantage that the Earth Kingdom has over the Fire Nation is in area of cavalry. We knew that most of our troops often fight in infantry roles, and while we have the rough rhinos as our cavalry unit, it still isn't enough. He unwrapped a scroll the blonde had given him. The Fire Nation Crown Prince saw a picture of what appeared to be a cavalryman mounted on a puma goat. The cavalryman in question was armed with a crossbow and a guandao as its close-range weapon, like the weapon wielded by Kachi. Another picture in the same scroll depicted another cavalryman that is armed with the same composite bow as the Yuyan archers, and a liadeo on its side, but the most important thing is that the second cavalryman is riding a dragon moose. Both General Shinu and Prince Zuko suspected that Naruto had consulted with Governor Shun when he, Azula, and her friends were in Kozan on this issue. The idea does have merit, but there are several problems with these ideas, Zuko said. He pointed at the picture of the puma goat. First, we are not sure how many puma goats are left in the wild, making it implausible. Second, a dragon moose might not support the weight of its rider. However, if we would make it a small unit that either you, Governor Shun, or even Colonel Monk can control, then that might give us an extra edge. They can also serve as scouts if we need to send them to the Siwang Desert. General Shina nodded in agreement. Can I be honest with you, Prince Zuko? I think these military ideas were not just brought out of the blue by Lord Naruto. If I had to guess, Governor Shun must have come up with these ideas as well from his struggles against Earth Kingdom invasions. I agree, and I wouldn't be surprised. He's also like General Hao, practical but pragmatic as well, the prince replied, having fully expected this. I just wanted to inform you of this, not tell you, and then order you to take it straight to my father. And I thank you for that consideration, he bowed to the prince and walked away. He stopped at the doorway and turned back around. Prince Zuko, if I may ask? How did you manage to see all this? Pai Sho and a game of hide-and-seek. I beg your pardon? I had lived with my uncle and his Pai Sho set for 3 years, and he always told me that Pai Sho was more than just a game. I think I'm beginning to see what he meant. And the game of hide-and-seek? Naruto tried to teach me, Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee a lesson with the game. He tried to teach us how to always look underneath the underneath. I see. By your leave, Prince Zuko, he bowed again and left the room. Sokka stood in front of the gates of Piandao's castle. He took hold of one of the knockers and banged it. When no one opened the door, he knocked again. Finally, he grabbed both knockers and banged them repeatedly. The gate opened and a man appeared. Can I help you? He asked. Sokka was surprised but recovered. I've come to train with the master, he answered formally. You should know the master turns almost everyone away, the man told him. What did you bring him to prove your worth? He hadn't expected this. Right. The man shook his head. Let's get this over with. He opened the gate a bit more and allowed Sokka to come in. He then closed the gate and led the newcomer into the castle, taking him to the room where Piandao was practicing calligraphy. "Master, my name is Sokka, and I wish to be instructed in the way of the sword," the tribesman introduced himself to Piandao. "Sokka," he repeated, focusing on his calligraphy. "That's an unusual name." "It's actually a fairly common name in the Fire Nation colonies," Sokka explained hurriedly. He didn't want to get kicked out because of his name. "Let me guess. You've come hundreds of miles from your little village, where you're the best swordsman in town. And you think you deserve to learn from the master." The swordsman's voice had the slightest amounts of sarcasm and derision. "Well, actually I've been all over this side of the planet." "Yep, here we go," he remarked aloud. "And I know one thing for sure," the tribesman got down onto his knees. "I have a lot to learn." "You're not doing a good job of selling yourself," he commented, looking behind him from the corner of his eye. "I know. Your butler told me that when I met you, I would have to prove my worth. But the truth is, I don't know if I am worthy." I see." He put down the brush, took his sword and stood up. "Well then, let's find out together how worthy you are. I will train you." Sokka had a big smile when he heard those words. "Thank you, master. Fat will give you more appropriate clothing. Once you have changed, meet me out back." He walked away. The butler led him to a room and gave him some clothes. He quickly changed and followed Fat out to the back of the castle. "I'm here, master," he said as he stood across from Piandao in a large courtyard. "Very good," he replied. "The first thing you must learn is that your weapon is an extension of yourself." He drew his sword and went through a few motions. "You must think of it as another part of your own body. Like an extra long, really sharp arm," the tribesman summarized. "Exactly, the sword is a simple tool, but in the hands of a master it becomes the most versatile of weapons, and just as the imagination is limitless, so too are the possibilities of the sword." He sheathed the sword. Sokka could only look at him in amazement and agree. "What should we do today?" Aang asked as they lounged around the camp. "I'm tapped out," Toph replied. "I already picked my toes, twice." "Twice?" "The first time is for cleaning, but the second time is just for the sweet picking sensations." And she loved that sensation. "Sokka's been in charge in the schedule," Katara told the both of them. "I'm not sure what we should be doing. Plus, it's so hot today," the blind earthbender commented, picking her nose as she spoke. "How hot is it?" Aang asked, attempting to get a joke out of her. "I dunno, real hot?" She replied, missing the point. "Aye, it's hot, it's so hot." Katara tried to come up with a joke. "Momo is shedding like Appa." "Ha! Ha!" Aang just scratched his head. "I guess the jokes don't run in the family." "Oh, everyone's a critic," she grumbled. She was about to make a joke about Akela when she heard him growling slightly. She turned her at him and saw that he was looking straight at her. He was also giving her the wolf version of the hairy eyeball. All in all, he was essentially telling her not to do that. How does he do that? She thought to herself. It's like he knows what we're about to do. "Hey, Zuko," Naruto said as he sat down next to the prince in the garden. "How did the meeting with Shina go?" "Decently enough," Zuko answered as he watched the turtle ducks. "He listened to what I had to say without disbelief, but didn't automatically believe what I told him. He told me about the idea you pitched." "That's one of the reasons I always liked Shinu," the blonde replied. "Unlike the rest of those generals, he's actually earned his position. He's one of the few people I trust to make good use of the Yuyan archers. Also had the decency to inform me when that idiot Zhao tried to use them to take the avatar." "You chewed Zhao out for that, didn't you?" The prince would have loved to have seen that. Like a pack of dogs on a piece of meat. "I went to the fortress and chewed him out in front of everyone there. He couldn't have left fast enough after that." they shared a laugh about that. Zhao had been arrogant in life, and was always in need of a dressing down. Zuko handed his scroll back. About your idea, I hate to break it to you, but I don't know if they would work out, he confessed. Naruto sighed, but nodded in agreement. I'm not surprised, but it would remain a critical issue. Another thing would have been to capture all the ostrich horses, but that would take too long. Suddenly, Zuko noticed something. Aren't you supposed to be protecting Azula? He asked the blonde. She and the other girls are having a girl talk, Naruto answered. What's so bad about that? The way he made it sound, it was akin to torture. He threw him a look. Have you ever felt the urge to throw yourself off of the gates of Azula? Zuko shook his head. I did those 20 times in a row the last time I was in the same room when they had a girl talk. You're kidding, right? The Prince of the Fire Nation asked him. Zuko, it's just one of those things where we leave the other alone. She has girl talks, I take a bath. It was common knowledge that whenever Naruto went to the baths, he went with armed guards. The reason for this was because every time he went to the baths, his fangirls somehow know when he's going. He'd narrowed down the reason they could do this to either they had a network of spies following him, or when he went through the doors of the baths, a pheromone went up into the air that alerted them. The guards usually had to fight off a literal invasion of fangirls when this happened, which was why Naruto only took volunteers and made sure they got a pay raise. The two details that Naruto enforced were that only men could volunteer, for obvious reasons, and that there were no firebenders. You're supposed to stop them, not barbecue them, no matter how tempting, he often told them. Prince Zuko, said aloud to the prince as he walked towards the two with a rapid pace. General Shinu wishes to speak to you. It's only been a day, he remarked. I thought it'd take longer. It would have, had you talked to any other general, Naruto told him. You go have that meeting. I need some time to write out a few ideas for my book. He stood up. How's that coming, by the way? Somewhat better than I expected. Then again, I'm not an experienced writer, so I could be wrong. It's your book, he said to the blonde before he walked away. The warrior practices a variety of arts to keep his mind sharp and fluid, Piandao told Sokka as he prepared a piece of paper. The first you will learn is calligraphy. Write your name. He ordered Sokka as he handed him a brush. Writing my name will make me a better swordsman? The tribesman asked with disbelief in his voice as he looked at the brush. He didn't see how that was relevant to wielding a sword. When you write your name, you stamp the paper with your identity, the swordsman explained. You must learn to use your sword to stamp your identity on the battlefield. Sokka dipped the brush into the ink and held it over the paper. Remember, you cannot take back a stroke of the brush or the stroke of the sword. He withdrew the brush and looked at it, trying to think of what to do. You're getting ink on your face, Piandao told him. I am? He asked before looking at the brush. I am. So, this is about putting my identity on the page, right? Piandao nodded. He took the brush and painted his face with ink. He then put his face on the paper and rolled it around. When he was done, he showed the ink drawing of his face to Piandao, who just closed his eyes. Afterwards, Sokka and Fat engaged in a spar. They wore sparring armor and wielded wooden swords. Sokka made the first move by lunging at the butler. Fat's only move was to knock the sword out of his hands. He ran away and Fat followed, whacking his butt along the way. All the while, Piandao just watched. Later, Piandao blindfolded Sokka and took him outside of the castle. Landscape painting teaches a warrior to hold the lay of the land in his mind. He stopped Sokka and took of the blindfold. In battle, you only have an instant to take everything in. Sokka saw a breathtaking view of a waterfall and the surrounding land. Now paint it, Piandao ordered him, turning him around and making him sit down in front of a small desk with paper and ink. And no peeking, he warned him. While Sokka painted, Piandao looked out at the waterfall and waited. I'm finished, Sokka declared, showing him the painting. It looked like a child had drawn it, and what was even more obvious was that there was no waterfall. You added a rainbow. Is that okay? The tribesman asked worriedly. Piandao just sighed and rolled his eyes. When Sokka and Fat sparred again, Sokka was faring a little better than before. He was blocking strikes and giving a few back. Sokka, he heard Piandao say. He made the mistake of taking his eyes off of Fat. The butler used that mistake to get behind him and knocked him to the ground. Concentrate on what you're doing, Piandao told him. He could only give thumbs up in response. After changing back into his clothes, Sokka followed Piandao out back again. Rock gardening teaches the warrior to manipulate his surroundings and use them to his advantage, Piandao told him as they walked to the rock garden. Sokka looked at the rock garden. Manipulate them to my advantage, he repeated. Oh. He ran into the garden and started to move the boulders around. He studied a sheet of moss before grabbing it and running over to the boulders. He draped it down on the boulders, and then sat down himself, relaxing. He had made a recliner out of the boulders and the moss. However, when Fat saw the state of the rock garden, which had become messy, he had a small panic attack. Hey, would you mind grabbing a cold drink for me? Sokka asked once he saw the butler. Fat looked towards Piandao with a silent plea. I'll take a slice of lemon in mine, please, he said. Fat dropped his shoulders into a slump and walked away. Sokka and Fat sparred again for the third time. Sokka was doing much better, parrying the butler's strikes. He finally saw an opportunity and took it. He got his sword underneath Fat's hand and knocked the sword of it, disarming him. He held the sword's point to Fat's neck. After the butler held his hands up in surrender, he withdrew the sword and bowed to Piandao. So, where are we going next? Katara asked as she and Aang looked at the map. She pointed to a spot on the map. We're starting from here. No, we're over on this island, Aang said, pointing to a different spot. You noodle brains don't know what you're doing, Toph told them. I miss Sokka. Ooh, I got one, Katara said. She was about to tell a joke when she heard Akela growling. Turning around to look, all she saw was his rear end. Okay, Akela, I get it. Don't fart in my face. The wolf padded back to where he was taking a nap and lay back down again. How does he do that? She wondered aloud. Do what? Toph asked her. It's like he knows when we're about to do something and stops us. I don't know, and I really don't care. You've had a good first day of training, Piandao told Sokka, as they across from one another. I have? Sokka asked, surprised by those words. But I thought I messed up every single thing we worked on. You messed things up in a very special way, the swordsman told him. You are ready for a real sword. Are you going to give me one of yours? He asked with excitement. No. His answer made Sokka's face fall. Your sword must be an extension of yourself. So tomorrow, you will make your own sword. When he heard that, Sokka had a big grin on his face. Zuko walked into Shina's office at the barracks. It was a cluttered, yet neat-looking room. You asked for me, General Shinu, he said after saluting the general. Yes, Prince Zuko. Come in. He sat back down in his chair at his desk. Please close the door behind. Once the door was closed, he walked over to the desk. Is this about the information I passed on to you? He nodded. I have gone over the reports myself. What you have told me has made sense. Tomorrow morning at the meeting, I plan to tell the council and purpose your idea. I want you to join me in the meeting. I would be honored, but that's not what you called me for, is it? He had a feeling that it wasn't. No. I asked you to come because I wish to have your opinion on the deployment of soldiers. You were the one who saw what General Hao was planning, so you should have a voice on who fights where. He gestured at the plans he had come up with laying on the desk. The scarred dragon reached for the plans on the table. "May I?" he asked the general, who nodded. He picked up the plans and looked over the details. "You seem to have everything in hand. But I would make 2 adjustments. First, see if you can get Yuan archers in all 3 colonies. Their skill with the bow would help the defenses, and Colonel Monk has told me in a written message that his group is staying in Kozan for a bit longer," Shina conceded, seeing the logic. "And the second is? Have the dragon's fangs defend Akawan. They know that colony. They're the best choice to defend it," he answered as he put the plans back down on the desk. "Yes, I can see the reasoning there. Very well, I'll make the adjustments. Thank you, Prince Zuko." He stood up from his chair and saluted the prince. "It is my pleasure. I will await your summons for the meeting." He returned the salute and left the room. Both Piandao and Sokka stood in the armory. Choosing the correct material is the most important step in crafting a sword, Piandao told Sokka, as they stood in front of a table that held bricks of different kinds of steel. "You must trust your steel with your life. Choose carefully," he warned. Sokka began to examine the different bricks, holding them in his hands and weighing them. He couldn't get a feel for any of them. That was when a thought struck him. "Master, would it possible for me to leave and bring back a special material for my sword?" he asked the swordsman. "I wouldn't have any other way," he answered with a small smirk. They were all taking a nap when Toph sprang up from the ground. "Sokka's coming," she declared excitedly. Katara and Aang woke up in an instant when they heard that. Sure enough, Sokka walked into camp with an easy stride. "Hey guys, what are you doing?" he asked. Their answer was to jump him and give him a big group hug. "We missed you so much," Katara declared. "Say something funny," Aang told him. "Funny how?" he asked with confusion, making the 2 of them laugh. "What's their deal?" he asked Toph. "I don't know," she said as she turned around. "They missed you or something. I didn't care." However, one could tell by the blush on her cheeks that she was lying. He looked over at Akela, who shook his head slightly. "If you say so," he told her before looking at the rest of the group. "Anyway, I need some help." He led them to the crash side of the meteorite. At the bottom of the crater was the meteorite itself. The meeting was about to begin. The generals had begun to walk into the room and sit down around the map. Zuko sat beside Shinu and looked around. "What's with that one guy? He looks like he wants to roast me alive," he asked the general in a whisper, looking at the man in question. "That's Jean, Zhao's son," Shinu answered him. "And it's not just you who he has it in for." He noticed Jean was glaring up at the dais. When he looked over to where Azula was sitting, he noticed that the glare was directed at Naruto, who was leaning against one of the pillars. "I see." Everyone settled down when Ozai came into the room and sat down on the dais at the top of the stairs. "Prince Zuko, what are you doing down there?" he asked, a small amount of surprise in his voice. He had not expected his son to be here. "I had asked him to come, my lord," Shinu explained to the Fire Lord. "Well, with any luck, he'll know his place," Jean said with a condescending smirk. If he was expecting Zuko to talk back, he was disappointed. The prince just stayed in his seat, completely silent. Sitting next to Ozai, Azula watched her brother with approval. Naruto watched with approval as well. "You have something to bring forward to this meeting, General Shinu?" Ozai asked, ignoring what Jean had said. "Yes, sir." He stood up. "As you know, sir, we have been getting reports of enemy troop movements. We had initially believed that they were planning to attack Ba Sing Se and retake it. However, due to information given to me by Prince Zuko, I believe that is not the case. I believe that the enemy will swing down to the coast near Ba Sing Se and take ships to Full Moon Bay. From there, they'll head into the Si Wong Desert, and we'll lose them." Once they come out of the desert, they will attack Kozan, Udao and Akawan, crippling our forces. Once they have done that, they will use Akawan as a staging area to invade the Fire Nation. The face of the Fire Lord did not show anything. And how do you plan to counter this supposed attack? We cannot pull our forces away from Ba Sing Se. To do so would leave the city open to attack. My recommendation is that we pull all Fire Nation forces south of the Serpent's Pass into defending the 3 colonies. He signaled the servants to give the generals copies of the plans for the deployment of the soldiers. You would have us abandon the other colonies to protect these 3? One of the generals asked as he looked at the plans. It was a bold plan, but also a very risky one. Unfortunately, yes, General, Shinu told him. If the enemy forces do indeed attack us like this, the other colonies become unimportant. The colonies of Akawan, Udao and Kozan are the lifeline of the Fire Nation in the Earth Kingdom. If we lose those 3, we might as well pack up and leave the Earth Kingdom. Never! Roared another of the generals, standing up. I'm from the colonies. They're my home, and I would rather be damned by Agni than leave them. Thank you, General Li, Ozai said with a firm voice, making the outspoken general sit back down. Continue, General Shinu. Thank you, sir. As you can see, I believe I have the right divisions at the colony that best suits them. The only thing that could be improved is that if we had squads of Yuyan archers at each colony. He looked at Naruto for an answer. That's fine. I'll have Lieutenant Bayu send some of the men over to each, the blonde told the general. You cannot be taking all of this seriously. Jean spoke, crumpling up his copy of the plans. We already know that the enemy forces are heading towards Ba Sing Se and plan to retake the city. There's no need to listen to any of this crap. Shinu was about to speak when Zuko stood up. General Shinu, if I may? He asked the general. Please, Prince Zuko, by all means, he told the prince. Thank you. He turned to Jean. The man leading the enemy forces is one of the Council of 5 who managed to escape imprisonment in Ba Sing Se, he said. He is a practical man and thus has practical goals. He knows retaking Ba Sing Se will accomplish nothing. It's a symbol, nothing more, and it will not stop the war. If he wants the war to end, he will go for the colonies and cripple us. He will then use that to stage an invasion of the Fire Nation. Listen to the experienced prince. The word experienced was laced obvious sarcasm. Just because you've been in one fight, you think you know everything about war, don't you? No, General, I do not. Jean cut him off. Of course, you don't. You led a single division in the defense of one colony. A weak and pathetic division at that. I'm amazed that you actually managed to win, let alone defeat the enemy forces. His contempt for the prince was evident for all to hear as he spoke. Sokka, Aang and Katara pushed the meteorite up the road to Piandao's castle with Toph helping by earthbending. When they finally stopped at the gate, Sokka ran towards it and began to bang both knockers. The gate opened and Piandao walked out. Who's this? He asked as he looked at the others there. Oh, these are my friends. Just other, good Fire Nation folks, Sokka told him. The others bowed to Piandao, who bowed back. Do you think it's possible to make a sword out of a meteorite? He asked the swordsman, looking at the meteorite in question. We'll make a sword unlike any other in the world, Piandao declared. Once the meteorite was inside, they went to work. Piandao had Sokka start up the forge and kept it going by shoveling coal into it until they brought the meteorite next to the forge and Fat had gotten the hammer. Sokka reached for the chisel but grabbed the pointy end by mistake, cutting his hand. Are you alright, Sokka? Piandao asked him. Yeah, I'm fine, he quickly assured the swordsman. Sorry about this, I'll get another one. He reached for a different chisel. No, we will use that one, the swordsman's tone was final. Yes, master. He brought the chisel forward in the cut hand, covering the point even more with his blood. He held the chisel over the meteorite while Fat drove it in. After that was done, he grabbed a smaller hammer and chiseled away smaller fragments of the meteorite. It was hard work, even more so with the forge going behind him and making him sweat. He finally had enough pieces for Fat to place in the forge while he worked the billows. Aang and Katara looked on as he worked. The smelting process took all night, but he never left the forge. When he awoke from sleep, he would get back to work by putting more coal into the fire. Unbeknownst to him, Piandao was watching him. By the time morning came, the fragments of the meteorite had melted down into liquid. He pulled out the crucible with a pair of tongs and poured it into a mold of a jian. Piandao took over at this point. He hammered the metal into shape and once he felt it done, plunged it into a barrel of water, cooling it. Once the actual blade was done, Piandao disappeared for several hours. They were told by Fat to join him in the practice room. Sokka sat before Piandao while the others sat behind him. Sokka, when you first arrived, you were so unsure. You even seemed down on yourself, Piandao told him. But I saw something in you right away. I saw a heart as strong as a lion turtle and twice as big. And as we trained, it wasn't your skills that impressed me. He took the sheathed sword offered by Fat. No, it certainly wasn't your skills. Sokka looked away in shame. You showed something beyond that. He drew the jian from its sheath, showing the black blade. Creativity, versatility, intelligence, these are the traits that define a great swordsman. And these are the traits that define you. He sheathed the sword and held out for Sokka to take. You told me you didn't know if you were worthy, Piandao told him as he took the sword. But I believe you are more worthy than any man I have ever trained. Sokka could only look at the jian in his hands. He couldn't continue the lie anymore. I'm sorry, master. You're wrong, he told him. I'm not worthy. I'm not who you think I am. I'm not from the Fire Nation. I'm from the Southern Water Tribe. Katara, Aang and Toph had varying degrees of shock plastered on their faces when he said that. I lied so I could learn swordsmanship from you. I'm sorry. He offered the sword back. I'm sorry too, Piandao said as he turned away, only swing around and swipe at Sokka with his jian. Sokka leapt backwards and blocked the next strike with his sheathed jian. When they saw he was being attacked, the others charged in to help. No, he told them. This is my fight, alone. The warden walked into Iroha's cell again with food. You used to be the pride of the Fire Nation. Our top general, the Dragon of the West, he told him with scorn. Now look at you. He dropped the tray to the ground, scattering its contents. Iroh reached for the fruit behind the bars. Look at what you've become. He walked out of the cell. Iroh stood up and undid his robe. As the robe fell off, so did a sheet off of his stomach. Whatever flap or fat Iroh had had before his imprisonment, it was replaced by muscle, lots of it. An idea to break out had come to him, but for it to work, he had to get himself back into fighting shape. It had been long, hard work that also reminded him of basic training, strangely enough. But it was worth the pain. He felt like he was the Dragon of the West once more. Eating the fruit, he grabbed the bars on the top of the cell and started doing one-handed pull-ups. The time to break out was still coming. He needed to stay in shape. The entire council was silent after what Jean had just said. No one had expected such an outburst. Zuko stood there in silence, nothing showed on his face. I'm assuming you're going to apologize, he finally said. Excuse me? The son of Zhao asked. What did you say? You heard me, General Jean. I am assuming that you are going to apologize for that insulting remark about the 41st Division, Zuko said. By insulting them, you have insulted me. Oh, I got two for the price of one. He asked with a condescending smirk. Will you apologize, sir? Oddly enough, the prince did not find himself angry at the man like he should have. He found himself to be calm. I do not need to apologize for insulting a single division, and a pathetic one at that. I also see no reason to apologize to you, Zuko. The fact he didn't say Prince made everyone look at him in shock. He was deliberately being insulting now. You are a pathetic person who does not even belong in this council, let alone this chamber. It probably would have been better if you had stayed in Akawan. That way you would have some illusion of being in control before they killed you. Have you all heard him, everyone? The scarred dragon asked the chamber. General Jean has insulted both my honor and the honor of the dragon's fangs. I have asked if he will apologize, and he insults us both further. Therefore, I ask for satisfaction. Everyone in the room, except for his family and Naruto, stared at him in silence. He had just asked for an Agni Kai. You would challenge me to an Agni Kai? Jean barked a harsh laugh. You will be humiliated in front of your father. Your father said something like that before I fought him, he replied, his voice still calm. He was the one who was humiliated. Do you accept the challenge? He will, Ozai announced. General Jean has spoken out of turn, and has acted with complete disrespect to both Prince Zuko and the 41st Division. The Agni Kai will take place at noon in the training yard at the barracks. He stood up. This meeting is adjourned, he stated before walking away. Sokka and Piandao stood across from each other with swords drawn in the courtyard. The others just watched from the balcony as the two faced each other. There were only a few times they had seen such a serious expression on Sokka's face. If they were honest, that kind of expression was beginning to scare them. Piandao made the first move by lunging forward. Sokka blocked and they exchanged strikes. He had to be careful. Piandao wasn't a master of the sword for nothing. But he is older and a bit slower, he thought to himself. If I use what agility I have, I might be able to level the field. He lunged forward, only to be shoved back against into a post of the bridge. Recovering, he got onto the post to give himself a small advantage. Piandao pushed him back, making him jump from one post to the other, and then along the wooden rails. He got off the rail and rolled across the bridge to both give him more room, and to avoid a strike from Piandao's sword. Excellent, Piandao told him as he got onto the rail again, and used it as a launching point to jump away from the bridge. Using your agility against an older opponent, smart. He pressed forward. Now he knows what I'm trying to do, he'll be able to counter it, Sokka thought as they fought. He was being pushed away from the bridge, and onto a staircase. There. I need to get to higher ground. Before he could do so, Piandao maneuvered him up against the staircase wall. He dodged the strikes of his sword, which made 2 cuts in the stone. He cartwheeled away to avoid a strike and swung back in an arc to deliver his own strike. He placed both feet on the wall behind him, and used it to push off, leaping forward into a lunge. Piandao turned to avoid it, and he used the opportunity to climb up the wall. Good use of terrain, fighting from the high ground, the swordsman acknowledged as they exchanged strikes. So long as I can stay up here, and he stays down there, I'll have a chance to win, he thought as he swung his sword. He saw a chance when Piandao lunged forward with his sword in a thrust. He used his own sword to trap it, and placed his foot on it to hold them in place. Piandao tried to get his sword free, but Sokka had trapped it. He finally got it free by pushing it up, off-balancing Sokka, and making him slam into a stalk of bamboo. The others winced when they saw and heard that. When Sokka looked up, he saw Piandao standing over him. He ducked his head to avoid a strike that sliced the stalk behind him in 2. As the bamboo fell, he ran into the thicket behind him. I need to get an advantage on him, he thought. Maybe if I can block him with the bamboo, I can also distract him. He started cutting off stalks as he went through, letting them fall. As Piandao came through, he cut through them effortlessly. Spirits, that didn't work. Sokka thought. I need a different tactic. He grabbed a stalk and pulled it along with him as he ran. When he released it, it swung back towards Piandao, who cut through it with ease. Yes, use your surroundings, he told Sokka. Make them fight for you. He cut through 2 more stalks Sokka tried to use against him. Sokka ran out of the thicket with Piandao behind him. He took a quick look behind and saw that he had disappeared. Where did he go? He asked. He got his answer when Piandao's sword appeared right in front of his eyes. He leaned back to avoid it and slid forward. He stood up but stumbled forward. He stabbed his sword into the ground and then used his momentum to swing it back at Piandao, making dirt hit him in the eyes. Piandao backed off. He tried to see but the dirt ensured that he couldn't. Very resourceful, he told Sokka with approval. But if he couldn't see, then he would hear. He turned his head to listen. Okay, I've blinded him, but that doesn't mean he can't fight. He hears one sound from me and he has me, Sokka thought as he moved carefully around. If I can get around him without making a sound, I should be able to. He was so busy keeping his eyes on Piandao and trying to come up with a plan he didn't see the stick on the ground until he stepped on it and made it snap. Piandao swerved his head to the noise and charged forward. He swung a strike and Sokka blocked it, but that was what he wanted. He quickly disarmed Sokka and with a swing of his sword, knocked him to the ground. As Sokka looked up from the ground, Piandao stood over him, his sword pointing at his face. Aang, Katara and Toph leapt over the banister and charged forward. They stopped when Piandao withdrew his sword. Excellent work, Sokka, he told him, making him confused. He signaled Fat, who threw the scabbard at him. With practiced movements, he held the sword directly in the path of the scabbard, sheathing it. I think I'm a little old to be fighting the Avatar, he told the others pointedly. They were surprised when he said that. How did you know? Aang asked him. Oh, I've been around a while. Pick things up. Fat came to him with a towel, which he used to clean his eyes. Of course, I knew from the beginning that Sokka was Water Tribe. You might want to think of a better Fire Nation cover name. Try Lee, there's a million Lees, he suggested as he drank the cup Fat had given him. We know one, Sokka told him. He's a bit eccentric. Why would you agree to train someone from the Water Tribe? Katara asked him. He handed the cup back to Fat. The way of the sword doesn't belong to any one nation. Knowledge of the arts belongs to us all, he told them as he handed his sword to Fat and walked over to where Sokka's sword had stuck into the ground. Pulling it out of the ground, he presented to Sokka, handle first. Sokka, you must continue your training your own, he told him as he took the sword. If you stay on this path, I know that one day you will become an even greater master than I am. They bowed to one another. Sokka looked over his jian. He noticed an inscription on the blade. It was one he had seen before, and he was surprised to see it. Abandon your fear. Don't give an inch. Advance and never stop. If you retreat you will age. Be afraid and you'll die, he read. Master, how do you know this phrase? It was my master who taught me that inscription. And yet, you have seen it before, Piandao commented, having seen the look in the tribesman's eyes. Yeah, I have. But it seemed like a long time ago now. Well, I am surprised. Even if you are a paragon, I never thought you would know about this inscription. Wait, how did you know I was a paragon? Sokka asked, shocked to hear such a thing come from him. He smiled a little. I saw the medallion. Of course, he saw it, he thought to himself, embarrassed for not realizing that simple fact. Who was your master? He asked with curiosity, his embarrassment fading away. He was a man from the other side of the world but was famous worldwide. To swordsmen, he was known as the Ken no Ryushu, Lord of Swords. But his name was Kenji Uzumaki. You knew an Uzumaki? Katara asked the swordsman, clearly surprised by the fact. Indeed, I did, and I was proud to learn from him. He taught me everything he knew, including the art of the forges. He knew how to forge a weapon. Aang asked, surprised. He would have thought that a swordsman would only know how to use a sword. Yes. The Uzumaki clan was among the greatest forgers in the world, Piendao explained. You would have been hard-pressed to find a weapon that was equal to one forged by an Uzumaki. That inscription had been in the clan for as long as they could remember. To them, it was the vow they've always made in a battle. But my master had known it meant something else entirely. Did he tell you? Sokka asked. No, the secret was meant for only one person to know. But he did entrust me with something. He took the scroll in Fat, who had retrieved it earlier, and had it in hand. When I was finished learning from my master, he gave me this scroll and told me to safeguard it. I was also told to pass it on to the student I thought worthy enough to keep it. He instructed me that it was only to be opened and read by another member of the Uzumaki clan. Now, I give it to you. He handed it to Sokka. He took the scroll and examined it. It was old and slightly yellowed. He feared that if he handled it wrong, it would be ripped apart. It was tied off by a complex knot and the seal on the scroll was a red whirlpool. Shouldn't you have given this to Naruto? It belongs to him by right, the tribesman asked. I would have, had he been my student. But now, it is your care. Thank you, master. They bowed once again to each other. Zuko and Jean faced off in the training yard of the barracks. You should surrender right now, Jean told him, confident in his victory. It'll save you the humiliation. Zuko said nothing in reply. He simply waited for the Agni Kai to begin. On the sidelines, Azula was watching with Naruto at her side. Mai, Tai Li, and Kori did not come, but Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari did. I'm glad little Zuzu isn't rising to the bait, she commented. She would have thought that her brother would snap angrily at the general. He's grown used to the put-downs, Naruto said. But I'm surprised at you, Azula. What do you mean? Don't play coy. I watched you in the meeting. You looked like you would burn Jean down to crisp after that last remark. He had stopped her by placing a firm grip on her shoulder. When someone insults a member of the royal family, they insult the entire family, she told him. He gave her a look. Azula, be honest. Fine. Zuko might not have been in the war for long. But when he was, he gave it his all. I am proud of that, she admitted. He showed his worth and Jean belittled that. Had he not issued that challenge, I would have. The gong rang. Zuko and Jean began to circle each other. They didn't attack. They were waiting for the other to attack first. Are you afraid to attack, coward? Jean taunted. Are you? Zuko asked. Jean simply snarled and threw a fireball at him. He deflected it with ease. That earned him a barrage of fireballs, which he dodged and brushed aside with ease. Is that it? Don't mock me, brat. Jean yelled. He bent a stream of fire at him. Zuko ducked beneath the stream and moved forward. When he got close to Jean, he broke the stream and jumped high into the air. He bent an arc of fire at him, using his feet. It forced him back, but Zuko didn't press the advantage. He landed on his feet and then waited. Why isn't he attacking? Azula asked from where she stood. He had a perfect opportunity right there. He hasn't figured out his enemy completely, Kankuro told her. He's still seeing if there are any more moves that Jean has in checking his reactions. Either that or he's just trying to piss him off. Is that you have to offer me? Jean asked the prince with scorn. Did you just hide behind the walls when Akawan was attacked? No, but I understand why you hate the dragon's fangs. You were the commanding general of the reinforcements. You wanted that glory, didn't you? You wanted to be the hero of Akawan, Zuko said. I guess you are like your father, a vain, selfish, egotistical, narcissistic, arrogant man who wants only to have his name glorified. Perhaps it was a good thing that Naruto killed him. The son of Zhao howled in anger and fury. Die! He screamed, attacking aggressively. He hurled fireball after fireball at Zuko, then bent streams, then whips, everything and anything he could think to attack him. And yet, Zuko did nothing but dodge, parry and deflect the attacks. And yet, slowly but surely, he was making his way towards Jean. He took a step forward every time he practically brushed aside the attacks. Meanwhile, Jean was getting tired. His continuous attacks were getting slower. That was when Zuko made his move. He used his legs to try and sweep Jean off of his feet. Jean saw what he was trying to do and backed away, but this was what Zuko wanted. He had broken Jin's roots and made his stance unbalanced. He pressed his advantage, forcing him back with controlled bursts of fire from both his hands and his feet. Finally, he knocked him with a fireball from his hand. He stood over him, looking at him. Go on then, kill me, Jean told him. Kill me. Zuko bent a fireball to the right of his head, the same thing he did to his father. What? You don't have the stomach to end a life? This isn't the time for that, Jean, he told the general, lowering his hands. There is still a war going on, and we need every general we have. This fight is over. He turned around and walked away. Jean stood back and with a yell of rage, bent a fireball at his back. But to everyone's surprise, he swung back around and knocked the fireball away with a kick. And then, bringing his yin and yang energies that he had separated as he walked away back into one, he breathed lightning at Jean, sending him flying back and crashing into one of the walls. He tried to stand up, only to find Naruto's Jian resting on his throat. General Jean, Ozai's voice rang out. Everyone turned to face him. Because of your disgraceful actions, you are stripped of your rank and are banished from the Fire Nation military. If you do not leave now, you will be killed. When Jean heard this, his face had a look of shock on it. As Naruto removed the Jian from his throat, he stood up and stumbled out of the barracks, getting jeered by the crowd and being pelted by whatever they threw at him. Ozai signaled a servant forward. I want these plans copied and sent to all forces in the colonies. Tell them that this takes priority. The servant took the copy of the plans and bowed. He walked away, only to stop when Zuko said wait. Yes, sir? Asked the servant, looking at the scarred dragon. When you have the plans copied, I want you to have a message from me taken with the copy that goes to Akawan. What is the message, sir? That the only time I should have to come over there is to celebrate their victory against those idiotic rockheads, he said with a small smile on his face. The servant bowed to him. Yes, sir, I will make sure the message is written. Thank you. He walked into the barracks to get away from the crowds and changed back into his clothes. While he was in a corridor, he saw Yao Jing waiting for him. Congratulations, little brother, she said to him, voice full of false praise. Get out of my way, Yao Jing, he told her shortly. What, you're not going to say thanks? Not when it's to the person I know orchestrated that entire thing. Whatever do you mean by that, little brother? She asked with an innocent expression that they both knew was a fake one. He grabbed by the shirt and slammed her into the wall, catching her by surprise. I'm not an idiot, Yao Jing, he growled at her. I knew it was you who set this up. I have never had a problem with Jean until that meeting, and I only know one person who can manipulate people to that degree. You were hoping he'd kill me in the Agni Kai, leaving you with one less obstacle to the throne. So, what if I was? She said with a smug smirk on her face. What are you going to do? Tell our father what I supposedly did. No, I don't have to. He returned the smirk. You may have to sneak around to try and kill me and Azula, but all we'd have to do is order your death and tell father you were plotting with the Earth Kingdom. The smirk disappeared from his lips as she looked at him with outrage. You wouldn't dare do that to another child of the Fire Lord. You may be his child, but you're also the daughter of a whore. If father hadn't taken you in, you would have been a whore as well. He released his grip on her. You would do well to remember that, unless you want to ignite another succession war. He walked away. Yao Jing just stared at his back, her face murderous. Her right hand kept clenching and unclenching, creating and extinguishing a flame in her palm at the same time. The four of them walked out of the castle gate. Sokka's jian was now slung across his back and the scroll was safely tucked away in his bag. "Wait!" They heard Fat cry out. They turned around and saw him jogging towards them. "The master wanted you to have this, as something to remember him by." He handed Sokka a small brown bag. He bowed to them, which they returned and walked away. Sokka undid the knot and pulled out what was inside. "It's a Paisho tile," he said, holding the tile between his fingers. "The White Lotus," Aang noted, looking at the tile as well. "Huh? What does it mean?" Katara asked. "Something, I just don't know it," Sokka said. They heard the gates close behind them. They turned to look at them, and saw the lotus design on the gate. "Ooh, that reminds me." He put the tile away, and took out a small piece of the meteorite. "Toph, I thought you might like this since you've probably never had a chance to bend space Earth before," he said to her, holding the piece out in offering. She took the rock out of his hand. "Sweet." She cheered. "Check this out." She bent the rock into a swirl, then into a star, and then into something that looked like it had been splattered against a wall. "You know, I don't think there's such a thing as space Earth," Katara said in slight protest. "If it's from space, then it's not really Earth." "Okay, then we'll call it the space rock," Sokka said as they walked away. "Must you ruin everything?" "I can't believe I missed you," she muttered. "Love you too, sis." That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.